problems of 2008. Yes?
I'm curious how FDR became such a figure for deficit spending.
We'll get into that on Monday.
Okay.
The short answer is that politics is nuts, and it makes people do things they wouldn't otherwise do. But yes. Number 5 is inadequate aging systems. Inadequate transportation system, inadequate energy system, inadequate capital equipment, all because this was all had been state of the art when it had first been introduced, but it was now quite aging. And there was also decreased investment in research and development throughout the 1920s, which was a factor. So there was a slowing down in the development of new technology. First a factor, overproduction or underconsumption. This became actually a debate. Did the U.S. society produce too much, or was it that the U.S. population didn't consume enough and saved too much? So essentially, you had a boom that started after 1920 on, in which wages kept rising, while productivity gains kept increasing. But in 1927, there was a plateau. Wages began to plateau, or they plateaued. So while productivity continued to increase. So essentially, already in 1927 and 28, you have a problem of depressed consumer spending and a decline in relative wages, even in some sectors. So while wages and purchasing power had grown rapidly between 1920 up till 1926, it was now beginning to decline relative to the levels of industrial production. So that the American public could not buy enough. So the United States had grown from internal growth, so the logical assumption would be it would continue to grow by exporting products to other parts of the world. Now, Europe had also been, at least important parts of Europe had been reinvesting after World War I. So while Europe was an important customer, it wasn't a customer with unlimited elasticity. And there was growth in Latin America, where wages were relatively high compared to Africa or Asia. Still low, but relatively high, and growing. But then with the Depression, globalizing, exports to the other parts of the world become impossible. But wages are declining in the United States as a result of the economic downturn. So where is the incentive? Who are the customers that are going to continue to buy the products that U.S. firms are producing? So from a practical point of view, if your consumer base is shrinking, the only logical thing you can do is shut down your production lines to some degree. At least pare them down so they're producing what the consumers that you have will buy. The problem is every time they pare down the consumer production line to meet a shrinking consumer base, the consumer base shrank again as a result of that. It was like a loop. So then you'd have to pare down again, but then every time you pared down, you had fewer consumers out there. Yes.
Basically, negative feedback loop?
Yes, it's a negative feedback loop. Thank you. That's precisely it. And this was something that nobody at the time could figure out what to do about, except increasing spending through public works projects or through consumer spending at the bottom through old age pensions or bonuses for World War I veterans. And then one of the results of this negative feedback loop is that investment in new capital in capital goods also begins to shrink rapidly. So essentially, the question was incomes did not match the cost of goods available. And until you fix that, this negative feedback loop would cause wages and production to decline in relationship to each other. Then the second, is that clear enough? That's probably the simplest part of it. And this has been connected to high levels of wage inequality in the United States in the 1920s. And the idea being the fix for this later was you've got a lower income inequality, which was done essentially in the 40s and 50s by both Democratic and Republican administrations, and increased consumption through policies which would encourage spending over savings, as well as government spending for a variety of projects and things like old age pensions and so forth. The second big factor was excessive debt loads, which maybe we'll cover on Monday since it's almost 5:30 and